James and I are hooking up together. We're getting ready to do this seminar series called The Way Forward. But this is the talk about it, but it's about you. So, James, I want to start off with this question in the form of, there's a song years ago, and I don't know who did it, but it was saying, "What's it all about, Alfie?" So what is this all about, James? We want to know.
Yeah, that's your song is from Alfie. What's it all about? Mine is from Marvin Gaye. What's going on? It's kind of what's in my mind right now. And that is the question of the day. What in the heck is going on? Well, we're going through some uncertain times. With this pandemic, has really caused us to relook at what life is about. And when we go through these times that are uncertain, it really creates discomfort, because I think most human beings like to have some clarity and certainty as to how things are going to unfold. Maybe not 100%, but generally they want to know how things are going to unfold. And right now, with this experience we're going through, there is a great deal of uncertainty. There are a lot of question marks. And so I think what we're trying to figure out is, how is it that we can be comfortable with the uncertainty? How can we be comfortable with the discomfort that is arising, and how we can just be in the moment? And we're looking at spiritual principles and concepts and ideas that will help us move through this with greater ease and with greater grace. So that's kind of where we're coming from. And I think one of the things is that we're seeing this, in the way I look at this, is an evolutionary trigger. It's really causing us to look at how we can be a greater service to one another on the planet, and also help us see how we can evolve individually and collectively as a human species. And sometimes we don't see the full picture. I remember a story about Howard Thurman, who was a professor at Morehouse College and also an advisor to Martin Luther King Jr. And he had announced that he was going to give a lecture. And the lecture was entitled "The Benefits of Slavery." Now, anyone looking at that time would say, he must be out of his mind. There is no benefits at all to what had happened through that. But when he came, so most people that came, they were ready to attack him and challenge him and chastise him for even thinking such a thing. And during his lecture, what he said was that the enslaved individuals from Africa were transported all over the planet. And the reason they were transported all over the planet is to bring a certain consciousness that they had from the continent, to help evolve the evolution of the consciousness of the planet as a whole, that you would not see right then, but only see a century later or even beyond. So folks calmed down and realized that, well, maybe there is some benefit that we cannot see. And then we can look at the pandemic from that perspective, because maybe there's a bigger picture that we need to take a look at, that we're not looking at it properly, or at least from that broader perspective, in order to see the benefits. And I think one of the things is to help us determine what we value. Oftentimes we value, the shiny objects in the world, the material things in the world. Some people may value, the sports teams and athletes and movie stars and, acquisitions and so forth. But in this experience that we're going through, we are actually realizing who the essential workers are. And oftentimes the most essential workers, not beside the doctors and the medical people, but the baggers in the grocery store, we realize how essential they are. The people who stock the food, the truck drivers, and all of them, is helping us realize that all of us are important. And it's really causing a transformation in what we value as one of the byproducts of this experience, to say, among other things. Anyways, it's helping broaden our perspective. Now, I know that, oftentimes you talk about, as we move forward, that to get out of this situation and with greater ease and grace, you say that the way out is in.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about what you mean by that.
So it's like the way out of this predicament that you talked about. We've got to take a look at going in to go out. So it's
Yeah.
a internal process. Now the out, as you just described, gosh, this is so universal. And then there's this book that I like. It's called The 9 Waves of Creation. What it says is quantum physics, holographic evolution, and the destiny of humanity says that there is an evolutionary impulse that we are experiencing now that's ushering in a new paradigm and a new reality. We're just going through a process, but when you take a look at it, it looks very uncertain and chaotic. And as we're doing it, we're saying, first thing we've got to do is to go in. And when we go in, something happens. Jesus Christ said, the kingdom of heaven is within, also at hand in this very moment. The other thing, the kingdom of heaven is near, and it's in all things. So there's something is happening here with this evolutionary impulse that we are tapping into by loving ourselves within. So in other words, we've got everything that we need already within us. James, I know you mentioned once before, you got a nice little expression about what's on the inside. How do you call that?
Oh, I mean, we're loaded and coated with possibilities. Yes. Yeah, we are loaded and coated with possibilities.
And I
And
love that. So
yeah,
that's what we are. We've got all of these things in us. It's like the baby chick that's in the egg and is getting close to that time for it to be hatched. The environment is claustrophobic. There is less and less resources there. And in that very moment, when everything really looks bad, the universe doesn't come in and say, look, baby chick, let me just make you a way and crack this open. What
yes,
happens, the universe said, I gave you everything that you need from the very beginning, inside of you, even the beak that can be able to break through that shell and come out. So what I'm saying is the way out is going in and tapping into everything that's within us is there. And the primary vehicle is unconditional love, loving all parts of us. It's love on steroids. It's love to the X factor. I mean, there is no spot where we do not give love its due. Every part of us, and James, even the shadow part of us, right?
yes, yes. Well, yeah, we talk about the shadow a lot because, oftentimes we don't want to face the shadow. We want to pretend that it's not there because we think it's something bad or something against us. But you mentioned the idea that the kingdom of heaven is within, and I also remember this scriptural reference that's in the Gospel of Thomas,
Hmm.
not in the formal Bible, but we could talk about how the Bible is put together. That's a whole nother conversation. But in the Gospel of Thomas, it is stated that the kingdom of heaven is all over the place, but people see it not. So that goodness, that heaven, the ever expanding good is everywhere. So even in the shadow, that is something that is not against us. It is actually for us. But we have to transform how we look at it. There's a story in the Bible when Jesus was in the wilderness and he confronted the devil, which means crazy thoughts. And there's a statement that he says, "Get thee behind me, Satan."
Yeah.
And oftentimes we thought he meant, well, just get away from me, don't bother me, go somewhere else. But over time, I realized that when that statement was made, he was saying, get thee behind me. In other words, transform the crazy thoughts, transform the shadow so that it is no longer considered to be an adversary, but is actually behind us. It has our back, it's pushing us forward. So that which we consider to be adversaries, that what we consider to be bad, that we consider to be against us is actually an ally or a friend in disguise. So we can look at this experience as a friend in disguise to help us evolve more as individuals, evolve more as a collective species. And so our perception is everything.
Ooh, the perception, our interpretation,
Yes.
our points of view. In order for us to move forward, we've got to go in and change that and love ourselves so then we could bring that forward. And as we do, we have to be willing to let go of some of our old perceptions, thoughts, and interpretations, and so that we can make space for the new. So when we do that, something interesting happens, because then we can start to see, what if Colin Tippin was right? What if nothing is against you? Everything is for you. Then we take this love and then we're able to see the conditions before us. In that moment, we can see, aha, there is something valuable there, but you can't do it with hatred and animosity and all of that. You got to bring love to the table. And it's like, James, I know you both have probably shared the story about the two city boys that went to their uncle's farm, and gosh, they were all excited. We're going to have a great time on the farm. He said, not so fast. One of the things that you will need to do, we call them chores. Here's a pitchfork. What I want you to do is start shoveling this manure. And there's a lot of manure. After about 15 minutes, one of them said, hey, I'm tired of this. And he stopped and he looked at his brother and he said, why are you still shoveling? And he says, with all of this manure, there's got to be a pony in here somewhere. And so, James, that is a story metaphysically about some perceptions. What is the metaphysics of this?
Well, I've always believed that how we look at a particular situation determines what it is for us. You know, in that story, both of them were looking at the same, quote, facts, but the way and the perspective they were coming from was totally different. And because they had total different perspectives, they were coming at it from two different perspectives. Their experience was totally different. And one of the things we have to take a look at as we navigate through this experience is ask ourselves, what perspective, what consciousness am I coming from? Because that's going to determine how we see it, how we're going to navigate through it. If we look at it as being something terrible, something bad, then that's what we will find. But we will find something that's beneficial if we come from the perspective that there is some benefit there for us as on a personal level as well as a collective level. So oftentimes when we look at a situation, we're just looking at one small part of it. We're not seeing the whole picture. I had an instructor, spiritual teacher, and he would say that oftentimes in life, it goes through a process of evolution. And it starts out with the thesis. In other words, things are going along pretty much normal. We get kind of comfortable with that. And then there's some disruption that comes in, what he called the antithesis is the thesis, and then the antithesis. But those things come together to form a new synthesis, a new way of being, a higher evolution, so to speak. And I think we have to look at this as being somewhat of an antithesis to what was normal, but what it's leading to is something greater for us individually and collectively. Like looking at, sometimes you look at a movie, and if you only see one frame of the movie, you're not seeing the whole movie. So you have to kind of be in it long enough to understand that there's something about to evolve that we don't see if we're just seeing it from that one perspective. So
absolutely. Wow. And as I'm as I'm feeling into this, I would say that a lot of people would like to get there, but they're having a challenge with it because of the internal judge or prior programming or successes or failures and trust issues with the universe and all of that stuff. Well, we're going to step you through that in our class and our seminar, so you don't have to worry about that. But one of the things that I really want us to take a look at today is that love is so magnificent that if we can just relax in the moment, open ourselves up, we don't have to work at this. It's already there and it will come forth. Now, what's really coming forth is the real us that's not blocked up with a whole bunch of contaminated thoughts. But when the contaminated thoughts come, what we're going to do is love them. And it just washes over them. So there's actually, what I want to say is, with this way of being, there's no way to lose. Now, we're not saying that this is the way. This is a way that really has some value into it. And so we are now adjusting to what's going on because we are meeting this condition with love and insights. And so I know that you're doing the same thing, James, as I am. Right now, this virus has created it so we're doing this together, presenting to our three churches. This would, under normal circumstances, wouldn't be possible. We are combining forces for good, and we're hoping that this will spread. But this, if you really look at it right, there are case after case in which this is now possible.
Yeah, because usually in adversities and challenges that we at least see from the human perspective, that something new always emerges. Even in a challenging environment economically, if you look back on history, some of the most successful people develop their success out of the most depressed economic conditions. And so even for us as human beings, when we have challenges like this, what we're saying is there's more in us to come out. And so now, rather than just resting on our laurels, it's almost as if the universe is asking, who in the heck are you? Show me who you really are now. So we have an opportunity to show who we really are, and that which is within us is always far more powerful than anything outside of us. And if we see it from that perspective, we'll bring that out and it'll make a big difference in our life.
And so
I know we can go on and on and on about this, but I don't know if you want to say a few things before we close out today.
So I just want to say, as we wrap this up, and boy, this has been good. You're right, and we're going to get into a lot more in the class. I want everybody to be aware of, there is this thing called what's true, and these are the facts. These are the conditions. But there's an expression, everything must change, so it's not permanent. What is permanent is the truth, capital Truth. And that's what I'm inviting people to tap into, is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, that there's only one presence. There's only one power, and that's God. And this God's nature is pure love. Let's tap into that, because that is the way, and that is inside of us. So if we move into that, something happens. So I want to turn it over to you, James, and wrap it up for us.
Well, I think you pretty much said it all with that. But if I would say one thing, if we want to really recognize as the truth, that everything that we need, we already have. It's within us. And if we realize that, come from that perspective, we're going to be all right. Every little ting going to be all right. If they say, look at the background, that's what I'm thinking about now, somewhere in Jamaica, man.
And so I want to close out with an affirmation that I invite you to say. Now, the folks at Unity of Las Vegas have heard this. Sacramento, you may have not. And it may seem kind of weird, but I want you to buy into this. Open yourselves up and just say, my God, what a fantastic time to be alive. So with that, sign off. God bless you.
God bless, man. Talk to you soon.